How can some of the brightest minds stumble when they hit medical school? It's a more common phenomenon than you might think. Today, we'll explore the surprising struggles of 3 exceptional students who seem to have everything figured out until they hit medical school. We'll dissect the reasons behind their unexpected challenges and, most importantly, what you can learn from them on how to improve your med school performance at any level. For privacy reasons, and so I can tell you more of the actual stories, I'm not going to use their real names. So the first one we'll call the golden child of academics. He was basically like the dream of, I think, every parent of what their child will become, whether it's academics or, anything. He went to Princeton for undergrad, studied science, and then went to Harvard Medical School. He was charming. He was consistently very high achieving. He worked super, super hard. It was like there was nothing that he couldn't do. He could memorize huge amounts of information, and he had an excellent recall of facts and details. Now, despite his stellar background, he found himself struggling in medical school. I remember one question that we were working on together, and he was kind of beside himself. He was like, I don't understand how UWorld can contradict itself. In this UWorld question, here is a diverticulitis patient who they say like the management is IV antibiotics. But here, look, this is like a different question, but it's also on diverticulitis. And here they're saying that you have to immediately go to the operating room. Like, I don't understand. Why is UWorld not consistent? He was getting really frustrated because he couldn't understand why he kept getting questions wrong when he was trying to use the answers from one question and apply them to get other questions correct. The issue, as it turned out, was that he was excellent at memorizing details, but he was struggling with the application. And in particular, he was struggling with seeing the forest through the trees. In other words, he was struggling with seeing the overarching principles rather than focusing on what he was doing. It makes sense because that's probably what he did up until that point, right? He had just worked so much harder and because he was so smart, that he was able to retain so much information that regardless of what was asked on his exams, he was able to get the question correct. What was different about these exams was that he was focusing on individual facts rather than understanding the broad concepts. And since the USMLE is focused on the application of concepts, he was struggling to see how to answer those questions. He was trying to understand every single possible scenario as opposed to focusing on principles of clinical decision-making. One of the things that we worked on was shifting his focus from memorizing details to understanding principles. And in this case, it was understanding a very specific clinical principle of management. What we talk about with our students is that to understand any management question, you have to understand 2 things. The first is that you have to understand the diagnosis. And second, you have to understand the severity. And what most people do is they focus only on the diagnosis, and that's what he was doing. So he was saying, okay, well, in this case, this patient has diverticulitis. Okay, so they're saying that management is IV antibiotics, IV fluids, NPO, whatever, right? And in this case, the patient has diverticulitis, and the management is go to the OR. Like, I don't understand. Like, diverticulitis, IV antibiotics, diverticulitis, going to the OR. Like, it doesn't make sense. What he was missing was the second axis of severity. In the case of the patient that was treated with IV antibiotics, they were completely stable. Their vitals were stable, they weren't hypotensive, there wasn't a perforation, there was no signs of a really bad systemic infection. However, in the other case, the patient was hypotensive, they were tachycardic, there were signs of shock. In addition to that, they tried IV fluids and it wasn't getting better. And so despite the fact that it was also diverticulitis, the severity was much worse. In general, if the severity is worse, you're going to have a more invasive management plan. We worked really hard on seeing the big picture in medical decision-making, as well as to see the big picture in the forest through the trees, which helped him to overcome his sort of tendency towards seeing everything as details and relying so much on the things that had made him successful up until this point, which again is hard. I think one of the hardest parts about this, and that you'll see for all these students, is that what got them to medical school isn't necessarily the thing that got them to the next level. It's hard when something is so much a part of who you are. Like in his case, like he was just so good at learning things and learning the details. He was missing that next hurdle of what it is that he really needed to focus on. His story had a happy ending. He ended up matching at the dream specialty that he had come into medical school wanting to match into, and matching at one of the top programs in the entire country. The next student we'll call the natural genius. I had known him from childhood. He'd always been one of the top students. In fact, he'd actually been selected as one of the top students in the entire country after being nominated as a presidential scholar. I think there's only like 100 and, I don't know, 30 something. And there was only 2 from his entire state, and he was one of the 2. He read extensively. He was just really, really smart, and he would just spend all of his time just reading these really, really high level books that like I had never heard of. For the presidential scholar like nomination, he ended up writing his essays, like these brilliant essays the night before, and they still came out like incredible. He was recruited by all of the top colleges. He ended up going to one of the top colleges in the country on some very, very prestigious scholarships and met like luminaries, just top minds in, a variety of different fields through this program. He also, because he was so accomplished, was admitted to medical school without having to take the MCAT. So when he entered medical school, he was admittedly very confident. And I think all of us expected him to just continue to have easy success because he had just been so successful up until that point. What ended up happening was the complete opposite. I met a faculty member at a conference once from a school, and I asked like, oh, do you know my friend? And he said, yeah, actually that's my advisee. And I said, oh, how is he doing? And it turned out like he was struggling. Like he had at one point almost failed out of school. And what he said his challenge was that he never really learned how to study effectively, right? Because he was so smart and he'd always sort of relied on his natural brilliance that he never had to learn how to buckle down and really understand like science concepts, and in particular, how to deal with huge amounts of information. I think in part, the fact that he hadn't taken a ton of science classes in college, in particular, hadn't had to take the MCAT hurt him, because the first time that he had to deal with huge amounts of science knowledge was actually in medical school. And so because the material was moving so quickly, he was struggling to learn how to learn in addition to learn all of the material that he had to. And so I think his big realization was that ultimately being smart wasn't enough. And so he worked really hard to develop better study skills. One of the biggest things that he did actually was also just learning how to work harder. He went to medical school before I did. And one of the things that he told me was that he would go to bed early and he would wake up early. And that when he did that, he would always do better. Like he would learn more and he would just do better on his exams. And so I heard that and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to do that because if this works for my friend, like, it's probably a good idea. I know that he's not the only one to struggle. You'll see this sometimes with people that did really, really well in physics or math as well, who they kind of breeze through the MCAT just because they're so, so smart. And maybe they, don't like memorization. And so they may not have done like super well on biology, but they were so good at everything else that their MCAT was really high and their grades were really good. And those people also can really struggle in medical school because there's so much, like, yes, it's true that there are principles that you have to understand, but there's also just a huge volume of information that you have to make sense of. There's not these principles where, like in physics, you can just learn one thing and then you can just walk in, in your pajamas and just do brilliantly on the exams. You actually have to make sense of a lot of the material beforehand. So you need that discipline and you need to be able to have not just depth, but also breadth. Our final story is a medical student who went to a top 2 medical school who was an MD PhD student. He had been a national debate champion. He was extremely good at analysis and argumentation. He had been selected as a Soros Fellow. It's a really highly competitive fellowship for graduate students that pays for 2 years of grad school. And there's not a lot that they give out. He had multiple first author publications in Nature. Like, he was just the absolute killer academic. When I met him, it was actually through an email that he sent me. So the first email that he sent me was basically in crisis. I was scoring in the 205 to 210 range on step 1, which was very below average. In the pre-step 1 pass-fail era, you wanted to get at least a 240. And ideally, if you wanted to get into the most competitive specialties, typically a 250. And so he was 3-ish standard deviations below that. He had said, like, I'm considering quitting medical school. In addition to that, he was kind of lowering his sights. He was targeting less competitive specialties, despite what I found out later was that he was interested in something that was much more competitive, but he was just losing his motivation and his belief in himself because he was struggling so much with these tests. This is a pretty common problem for people that are really, really good at studying things in depth, is that he didn't have a good system for retaining large amounts of information. He was really good at depth, but he wasn't good at breadth. Unlike in a PhD where you can really dive deep into one thing, or something like physics where you can just spend endless amounts of time. One of the big differences in in medical school versus hard sciences like maybe engineering or physics or chemistry or things like that. I was a chemistry major. You would do things like physical chemistry. And I remember I would spend like an hour going over one page of my tiny PChem textbook. And that was normal, right? Like it would take you a really long time to sit and really like understand something. I think PhDs can relate to this, where it's like you spend so much time on such a narrow question or such a narrow topic, and you can get really, really deep into it. That's different than in medical school, where you need a certain degree of depth, like you have to understand it. But where they struggle is in how do you deal with such a huge volume of information? How do you deal with the breadth of information that you see in medical school? And so his approach wasn't suited for that vast, broad content required for the USMLEs. He ended up alternating between extremes. Sometimes he would go sort of PhD mode and go into too much depth and really go down a rabbit hole. Or other times he would just do a bunch of practice questions because he was like, oh my gosh, I need to like move through the material more quickly. And he would vacillate between these extremes. The issue is that he would either not move and cover enough information, or he would move so quickly that he wouldn't learn it well. And so he was constantly having this problem, not accumulating enough quality knowledge because he was either forgetting it or just not learning it well in the first place. The solution in his case was to develop a balanced approach that focused on 3 key areas. The first, to deeply understand things and to see things conceptually. Second, long-term retention system. Third was having a system of reading through questions so that once he learned it, he was able to apply it and get more questions correct for the knowledge that he knew. And so once he learned how to read questions and apply things more conceptually, then he was able to do much better. Ultimately, he decided to postpone step 1 and focused on building a strong knowledge base over the course of his clerkship. So throughout his clerkships, everything he learned really well. He never forgot it, and he learned how to apply it. And so his shelf scores would gradually grow. His knowledge would gradually grow. We call this sort of like filling the bucket, right? So he fixed the leaks in his bucket by making sure that he never forgot it. And so his bucket just continued to grow in terms of how much it was able to contain. Ultimately, he scored a 255 on step 2, and he had a successful match. The last we spoke, he was having a hard time choosing between Stanford and Harvard for his dream residency, not the one that he had sort of lowered his sights for in the beginning. The key takeaway broadly is that to do well, you need to learn things well, never forget it, and learn how to apply it. What you really want is to figure out objectively, where are you going wrong? And once you know that, then how it is that you fix it. So I know it can sound surprising that even brilliant, hardworking students can hit unexpected roadblocks. Some common themes across these stories is, first, what got you here will not necessarily get you there. In other words, relying on things that have worked in the past may not be the thing that gets you to the next level. So the problems that we are trying to solve in medical school are oftentimes different than the problems that we had adapted our techniques for previously. In the case of the MD PhD student, being able to have a balance between breadth and depth, right, was a really big part of his success, as a consequence, you have to learn how to develop new learning and application skills. The struggles of medical students who had previously been very successful is not that different from what they call the Peter Principle. So the Peter Principle is a business concept where they say that people rise to their level of incompetence, which is kind of a harsh way of saying that basically, if you do well in business, right, you get promoted to the next level. And if you do well at that level, then you get promoted to the next level. But eventually, you're no longer doing like stellar. And so if you're not doing stellar, then they're calling that your level of incompetence. And so you stop getting promoted at that level. Personally, I think that's sort of a harsh way of describing this. I think a better way of describing this is that our success is going to be limited by our skills. Like if we're struggling, what that means is that we have to develop new skills. We have to recognize where those skill deficits are and then fill those gaps. Can you relate to any of these stories? Have you experienced similar challenges? If so, we'd love to hear in the comments. Also, to improve your USMLE scores, be sure to check out our guide on how to score 260 plus at any level, despite where you start, using the SCORE framework.